going to solve this worksheet. So we have information on the capabilities of workers in the United States making maple syrup or muffins and workers in Canada to make maple syrup and muffins. So the first questions are asking about opportunity cost. In the United States, one worker can make 3 gallons of syrup or 1 dozen muffins. So the opportunity cost for 1 dozen muffins is 3 gallons of syrup. And the opportunity cost for 1 gallon of syrup is 1/3 of a dozen muffins. Alright, so 1 muffin to 3 syrup, or 1 syrup to 1/3 muffins. And then for Canada, they can get 2 gallons of syrup or 4 dozen muffins, so it would be 1 gallon of syrup is equivalent to 2 dozen muffins, or 1 dozen muffins is equivalent to 1/2 of a gallon of syrup. So 2 dozen. So the absolute advantage in maple syrup is the US, because 3 is bigger than 2. They can make more syrup in a day than the Canadians. And the absolute advantage in muffins is Canada, because 4 is bigger than 1. They can make more muffins in a day than the Americans. So the comparative advantage, well, when the two countries or the two people have different absolute advantage, comparative advantage is the same. So we could just do it that way. But we can also see comparative advantage in maple syrup. Who has the lower opportunity cost? Well, the US opportunity cost is 1/3 of a dozen compared to 2 dozen in Canada. So that confirms it. Lower opportunity cost for maple syrup in the US. And for muffins, well, the opportunity cost for 1 dozen muffins in Canada is 1/2 a gallon of syrup, and in the US it's 3 gallons of syrup, so it's lower opportunity cost to the Canadians, and that means they have comparative advantage. So who should specialize? Well, countries should specialize where they have the comparative advantage. US should specialize in maple syrup. If they're each specializing, and the US is all the workers are making maple syrup, then we have 300 gallons, because we have 100 workers making 3 gallons each. And muffins, all the Canadians will make muffins, and we have 400 dozen muffins. Now we have to draw the frontier, so I always start on the y-axis and find what is the maximum amount of maple syrup we could have in the world between these two countries. If everybody made maple syrup, it would be 300 from the US, 200 from the Canadians, so 500 gallons. And then if we want to start with production of muffins, I mean that's everybody making maple syrup, who should go over to make muffins first? Canada should, because they have the comparative advantage in muffins. If Canada makes muffins, we're going to get more muffins and not give up very much maple syrup. So for every worker in Canada that moves over from syrup to muffins, we're going to lose 2 gallons of syrup, and we're going to gain 4 muffins. So by the time we have 100 of them moving over, we're going to have 300 gallons of syrup, because only the Americans are making the syrup, and we're going to have 400 dozen muffins. So this line shows as we move Canadians one by one over from maple syrup to the muffins, how many we have. These are all combinations. And now we have, at this point, we have all the US workers are making syrup, and all the Canadian workers are making muffins. If we want more muffins, and we want to trace out all our possibilities, we're going to have to move the US workers. As we move each one, we're going to lose 3 gallons of syrup and gain 1 dozen muffins. So if we lose 300, we're going to gain 100. And this is the last piece of our production possibility frontier. Now here we've changed the numbers. We made the Canadians more capable, right? We just doubled them from 2 to 4 and 4 to 8. So absolute advantage is now Canada, because 4 is bigger than 3. And absolute advantage of muffins is still Canada, because 8 is bigger than 1. But the comparative advantage still hasn't changed, right? The US hasn't changed because they haven't changed at all. But even the Canadians, their opportunity cost is the same. 4 gallons of syrup or 1 dozen muffins. That means 1 gallon of syrup or 2 dozen muffins, or 1 dozen muffins and 1/2 gallon of syrup. So we still have comparative advantage for maple syrup in the U.S. Their opportunity cost for maple syrup is 1/3 of a dozen muffins. In Canada, it's 2 dozen muffins. The comparative advantage for muffins is Canada, with a lower opportunity cost, 1/2 gallon of syrup compared to 3 gallons of syrup. So here we have a case where one country, Canada, has the absolute advantage in both, but they don't have the comparative advantage in both, because you could never have the comparative advantage in both. You then have to really look at the opportunity cost and see which one has the lower opportunity cost. So that's the worksheet. If you have any questions, please ask them.